What's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from January 1st to the 7th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. Of course, if you want to learn more about how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, and I finally feel good about actually being able to say that again now, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of these videos like a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. cannabis industry, identify top U.S. MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now, based on their current market caps and, of course, the growth potential, and then take advantage whenever you feel ready, if you wish to do so, pending when this announcement comes. Main thing is we don't know when. It's out of our control, but thank you, Ryan, for this post. As the news dropped, I believe it was the 3rd of Jan or 4th. I think it was the 3rd anyways, but HHS recommends Schedule 3. The President of the United States wants it rescheduled. Do you think the DEA will go against the President and the HHS? Good point. I have 3 letters for you. Let's fucking go, ladies and gentlemen. So we got confirmation that the DEA has begun its review, apparently, and so this was dated December 19th. And considering the news only came out to the masses on January 3rd, that's 15 days that some group of people must have known, and they've been preparing for it. And so we love to see it, although very annoying the DEA has to reiterate that they've got final authority to be douchebags. Time to abolish you guys. But with that, the news officially dropped PunchBowl January 3rd. The Drug Enforcement Administration told House lawmakers in December that the agency is actively reviewing cannabis' Schedule 1 status, and I think B-Funk is probably spot on here, saying, in other words, the agency's review's done, and they're just waiting for the most politically opportune time to announce your decision. So again, none of this is advice, folks, but plan accordingly, as another one of the key dominoes that we needed to fall has officially fallen, and so 2024 is looking brighter than ever. Just the official story from PunchBowl. If you're not subscribed, doesn't seem like they give you much more than this, but all these links will be in the comments, folks, if you want to check any of the sources. But MVP of the week, Steve Cohen. Fortunately, this follow-up letter to the DEA head Ann Milgram, dated January 4th, 2024, seems to confirm that Schedule 3 is the play, and so that can put a lot of our doubts about the redacted Freedom of Information request document to rest for now, at least. And so, love to see this was reposted as of January 5th, following up what he did in August, and we love to see this letter as he writes to follow up on our conversation about the rescheduling of cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. And so you can pause to read through it, but it does seem to confirm, right, wrote you and recommended the rescheduling of cannabis to Schedule 3 in a December 19th letter, which we just showed, wrote that your agency has begun conducting the review. And then even more down here, cannabis never belonged in Schedule 1 in the first place. I didn't know that he's been for it for a very long time, but nice to see him, pulling some of his weight that he can. And so all these links, again, in the comments if you want to check them out. So this is essentially a story on that if you wanted to read through it. U.S. Congressman urges DEA to expedite rescheduling cannabis. And so, yeah, well, thank you, Steve Cohen, for being our dude, our guy to make the play sort of happen, January 5th, 2024. And yeah, this is what I saw earlier, and that makes me love this guy. I was for cannabis reform before it was cool, since 1977. And we need someone like him to step up right about now. So pause to read if you're interested in some of the background if you're new to this channel. Love to see it, ladies and gentlemen. Not all is wrong with the world. And while Schmuck has obviously been the biggest and worst obstacle for all of this, as he's led us on and lied to us and screwed us for however many years, the writing's been on the wall since August 30th. It says it right here, right? As he stands by the recommendation from HHS to the DEA to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. It's kind of funny to look back and think how concerned and worried we were. I mean, rightfully so, because they've lied for so long, but it seems like the best case scenario is that the Dems have destroyed everything and they need something to get their popularity back, and this is one of the plays. And so wanted to share this video from Chart Guys. Very great at summarizing essentially what I try to get across on my channel. And I'm going to play about 2 minutes and 18 seconds of it, so let's give it away for Dan.
Hey everyone, I'm Charting Man Dan. I've been trading cannabis stocks for the last 13 plus years. There's a bit of buzz building in the sector over the past couple of weeks. We got a lot of new people on social media talking about it. So we're going to do a video here talking very briefly about some fundamentals, bigger picture stuff, and then of course getting into the charts and seeing where we stand as we kick off 2024. All right, so we have 2 different groups right now that are interested in cannabis stocks. You've got the people that have been interested for years that are likely bag holding, and these people are, I'm generalizing of course, but
guilty as charged. We've learned a lot, but I am glad that I've started some new positions in Air and Columbia Care.
Cynical, sick to their stomachs, sick of this sector. Many will sell at break even when they get the opportunity. Many need 150% from here to get to break even.
And more.
What has happened in this sector over the last 3 years is we had a big run up with the 2020 election. When was the election? Whenever the election was. Biden, we got the Senate and the House, there's going to be some change. And then it was just a slow bleed of absolute despair. And then you got the newer group of people that are interested, many because of the technical setup, but they've started paying attention over the last month. And their
Lucky
position,
them.
there's going to be some jealousy because the people that need 150% to bounce that were early have a way worse position than the people that are just getting interested now. That's the way markets work. I highly suggest doing everything you can.
Live and learn.
Put away that cynical despair and to help each other out, share information. For example, I've been seeing over the last 2 weeks, there's a definite shift in Twitter. I'm on Twitter every day, interacting with people, and there's a lot of big accounts that are getting interested for the first time.
Feels
over
real
the last month
this
or so.
time, but
and
not get ahead of ourselves.
We'll talk about the headline that came out this week, but with these new people, again, we can share information. So I see one of them retweeting Schumer saying whatever he's saying, and they're saying, look at this is bullish. Meanwhile, we know his words mean absolutely nothing. He said the exact same thing 57 times over the last 3 years. So we can share that information. You don't have to be cynical and call him stupid. We can say, hey, just so you know, he said this 57 times over the last 3 years. His words mean nothing. He's the perfect epitome of what is everything wrong with government officials in the United States.
And he's bang on as the biggest obstacle has been government officials, particularly those in Congress. And so if you're new to my channel, welcome. Hopefully you like my storytelling with the news style of content. And if you've been here for a while, thank you for sticking with me. I hope you've learned something, and I wish you a very, very bright 2024. And so to give you an example, though, of some of the new traders that have come in and are eyeing the opportunity, this was from December. I don't know who this person is, but obviously with a following of 227.5 thousand followers, it's nice to get the awareness out there. And so I'll just show you the full comment as she's eyeing an opportunity that, excuse me, not everybody is probably seeing. And then Johnny 2 Utes gets it bang on. Cannabis, you're buying U.S. multi-state operators before the DEA reschedules from 1 to 3, which eliminates 280E taxes. Hallelujah! And makes these companies much more profitable. It makes America a lot more like America again and gets rid of this ridiculous socialist fascist policy that should have never been there in the first place. HHS recommended a move to 3. Now we are just waiting for a decision from the DEA. And so for anyone wondering for a timeline, just sharing what Ackerman 2436 said, January 23rd is, I think, the mutual agreement of the extension for that court case going on, MSOs and the government. And so the fact that the lawyers from the MSOs are okay with the extension is pretty suspect, but that's ultimately out of our control, so no point wasting energy thinking about that. Main thing is we love to see cannabis and the state-led growth story finally getting some of the attention that it deserves. But at the same time, just got to show you that politicians are mostly soulless vessels that won't do the right thing even if they can, as the Hill opinion piece just highlights essentially, I think last week we got the second announcement from Biden doing pardons or clemency, providing relief and essentially righting his past wrongs for writing the 1994 crime bill. Long story short, though, is that his original announcements last year, not a single person was released from prison as a result of the proclamation, right? So big nothing burger, just a headline, nothing much actually done. So I invite you to pause to read if you're just interested in the story. Otherwise, I'm just going to bring you down to the bottom, which highlights it's the second category of grants from December 22nd that holds the promise of significant clemency relief. Significant? That's a bit of a stretch, as he commuted the sentences of 11 people who were serving extraordinarily long sentences for the crime bill that he wrote up. Fucking crazy. The irony. 4 of the people were serving life sentences, and all but 1 of the others were serving sentences of 20 years or more. And so apparently 11 grants from a backlog of more than 16,000 clemency petitions. Just do better, Biden. At this point, it's just, he's not human. Because then you would just do the right thing if you knew how. But all that to say is that apparently with this new announcement, 11 human beings will be released from prison. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong or if you happen to know any other source saying something different, but this is really all I could found and would agree with the writers of this. In the end, mercy shouldn't just be a December thing, and that's why we just want to outright deschedule cannabis if we could, give the plant back, and really just right this injustice that's been going on for way too long. But so with that, I think Dan said Schumer has tweeted 57 times. Now, I don't know if that's a legit stat, but I really hope Dan went to Schmuck's account and counted the number of times he's tweeted since 2018 about cannabis, because 57 almost seems like it'd be accurate. And to think, the blood on Schmuck's hands, the number of deaths and robberies, burglaries that could have been prevented had he passed safer years ago, right? The irony, We Drinks Guy says it out loud. Are you aware that the Senate Majority Leader gets to decide what gets voted on? Like Schmuck? If it wasn't clear before, clear now. They do not like the American people. I don't know why. And so if there was any chance of SAFE getting passed at any point, Dawn with an update apparently is mostly good news. Basically, Rep. Blaine Littmeyer, a GOP frontrunner to lead the House Financial Services Committee after Patrick McHenry, has decided to retire. And I believe French Hill as the heir for the role is a good thing. And so a bit more down here if you wanted to pause to read. But yeah, it's always been Schmuck. If you didn't know, now you know. And so with that, from CNBC's Fast Money, just going to play a bit of this clip, speed it up a little bit. Yeah. Pot stocks pop as the DEA releases their most public comments on the legal status of the plant
I mean, as
to
the guy
date.
who runs the Cannabis ETF, yet I'm the one that's so not terribly impressed by this news. Maybe because we've heard so much, so many times, both out of Washington. But let's understand the nuance here. The nuance also that basically this is within the hands of the administration. So the DEA, whose godfather essentially was assigned by Biden. This is a Biden administration controlled dynamic. You don't necessarily need a Senate or a House, and the House now, which used to be the friend to the cannabis industry, is now probably going to be the most difficult part to getting any legislation through. To be understood, the reason why this news is so important is when the DEA, and I think it is when, it's just about what timing, actually reschedules cannabis down from Schedule 1, probably to Schedule 3. It changes the free cash flow dynamics for the entire...
Like, why does he say probably when all of the sources say it's Schedule 3, right? Come on, Tim.
Industry. And it probably then gets some follow through for some other dominoes, including, I think, banking and dynamics that are not necessarily related. This is more important to the companies in the space right now, especially the big ones, who have huge tax bills every year. And I think this would be a game changer. And I think the industry, you can just tell by the way the market rallied today. And I'll footnote my friend Jason Wild, who said this to me. He's the chairman of one of the larger companies. He's also a hedge fund manager. And his view on the market's reaction to news like this that's already out there is something along the lines of, well, if they're going to do this on news we already knew, wait till this news comes out. And I agree with that. I think this will be big news when it happens. We've heard so many times from DC about something.
Is there an election year dynamic to all of this, do you think?
Well, I think the election year dynamic is if this stuff doesn't get done soon, I think it's going to get lost in some other stuff. So I think the timing on this, and again, it's over 100 days since at least I believe this news was already out there, and they've had a chance to opine. I think they're not just looking at it now. I think they've already been looking at it.
One of the publicly traded companies sort of at the...
Yeah, I don't care what this guy has to say. So with that, from Isaac Boltanski, another one of these investment firms. So thanks, Todd Harrison, for sharing this snippet. But again, take them with a grain of salt. I have to say that every time. But they still expect cannabis to be rescheduled under CSA this year to Schedule 3 later this year. Again, the timing is a matter of when, not if. I used to say that all the time. Tried to cut back on saying it. But the main thing is that this ridiculous predatory tax that should have never been in place in the first place will go away, and these companies will make a lot more money, and that will eventually lead it back into our pockets. And so with that, Cannabis Business Times industry attorney weighs in on possible cannabis rescheduling timeline. It normally takes years and years for this to get done, so I'm not going to dive into this much because it's just someone ultimately sharing their opinion, and you can read through it if you'd like, but it's just, it'll happen when it happens. It's not in our control. And so if you want to pause to read, I'll bring you down a little bit more. Pause to read, highlighting essentially what I've gone through on my channel over time, what we already know. But very happy to bring some studies, especially this one, new as of December 28th, 2023. We need more like this, but from ChemRxiv, has similar findings to some important studies in the past that went way under the radar, should have gotten way more attention, as cannabidiol inhibits replication through induction of the host ER stress and innate immune system. This is January 2022. While August 2022, cannabis consumption associated with lower COVID-19 severity among hospitalized patients, almost like consuming cannabis helps prevent getting the flu, right? What do you know? And so obviously all these studies, links will be in the comments, but this new one, could cannabis have been a medicine for the flu all along? Whenever I get sick, I'd self-medicate with it, but I haven't been sick in years. So, screening and simulation study of efficacious antiviral cannabinoid compounds as potential agents against SARS-CoV-2. Let's read it. The proliferation of severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS-CoV-2, and the persistent coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic. And I gotta say that now because without social media and without the internet, it couldn't have been done. You couldn't have tricked so many people and fooled them. But there's just too much suspect. And the sad part is like, obviously during that time, they didn't want any other options or novel treatments. They wanted the one solution, the experimental gene therapy. And so you just hope studies like this will get more and more attention because among the diverse pharmacological agents under scrutiny, cannabinoids have garnered attention for their potential antiviral properties. Yeah, no shit. Imagine we descheduled in the 70s. How much further along? But good news. Pause to read it all. The findings suggest a potential inhibitory effect of cannabinoid drugs on both viral entry and replication. Furthermore, simulations demonstrate cannabinoid binding to the CB2 receptor, suggesting potential immunomodulatory roles in SARS-CoV-2 infection, helping reduce inflammation, preventing the flu viruses from catching onto your cells. It almost seems to work that way. This research underscores the promise of cannabinoids as SARS-CoV-2 therapeutic agents, necessitating further validation and clinical exploration. And how's the fastest way we can facilitate this? Outright descheduling, but we've got to settle with the next best incremental step, which will be Schedule 3. And so with that, another survey from Normal. Most veterans support expanding medical cannabis access as of January 2nd. Like, is that too much to ask, especially for the Americans that need cannabis the most for all the crap the military-industrial complex would put them through? And so it comes out of Ohio State University, 315 active and veteran military personnel, and then 426 military family members. So small sample sizes, 300 were asked, and then 79% seemed to agree, while 426 family members were asked. 92% of them said yes, of course. Veterans Administration doctors should be legally allowed to prescribe cannabis, especially where it's legal. And sucks, of course, if you live somewhere where it's not. Try your best to get somewhere where it is. But last study to share, study finds most cancer survivors who used cannabis reported great degree of symptomatic improvement. Well, what do you know? Love to see it. It looks like they've increased the font size on this website. New study of 1,886 cancer survivors. They say study, but it really sounds like a survey. Found that nearly half either currently or previously used cannabis, with most of those who used marijuana after their diagnosis reporting that it was to manage symptoms like sleep disturbances and pain. About a fifth of cancer survivors it found currently use cannabis for symptomatic relief while undergoing active cancer treatment. So published last month in the Journal of Cancer Survivorship, the study says that the prevalence of cannabis use among cancer survivors was notable, with most regarding a degree of symptomatic improvement for the specified reasons for use. And so of all participants, 17.4% were current cannabis users, 30% were former users, and 52.2% said they'd never used cannabis. Of the 510 respondents, 27% who used cannabis after their cancer diagnosis, 60% said that they used it to manage sleep disturbances, followed by pain, 51%, then stress, nausea, and mood disorders or depression. And so, hey, at least just provide access to it for people that cannabis helps, because it's not for everybody, that's for sure. Also, about a fifth, 91 of the 510 of cancer survivors used cannabis to treat their cancer. The study says, makes total sense, about 20%. More here if you wanted to pause to read, but wanted to bring you down to this bit. Of the survivors who used cannabis to improve nausea and vomiting, so again, 50% didn't even use it, but of those that did use it, 74%, 131 out of 179, perceived it helped to a great extent. Because guess what? Your perception determines your reality. And so if people are perceiving that it helps them, they weigh the pros and cons, figure the pros outweigh the cons, and while we don't know all the research, that's why we want it descheduled so that we can figure it out. But when you compare it to opioids or alcohol, kind of a no-brainer what medicine you might want to choose to. And then, ironically enough, the 4-author research team kind of just exposes how little they know about cannabis. And again, we all want more research to figure this out, and that will come hopefully soon. Hopefully Schedule 3 allows for enough that descheduling would fully allow for, but all that to point out, they found that awareness of cannabis's potential health hazards were quite low among most of the respondents in the survey. Yeah, again, it's a case of the status quo. That's why, right? And so these seem to be some of the unfortunate side effects that people get, and I mean, I've just never gotten any of those, so lucky me, I guess. But that seems to be why, again, we all want cannabis to be out of the CSA in the silly place it never belonged in the first place. And so all that to highlight is that this study is the latest in a growing body of research looking into how cannabis is being used and how it might be used in the future to manage cancer symptoms, and it is funded by the NIH. And so the government funding medicinal studies for this plant, it can't be in the Schedule 1 anymore. Looking at how immunotherapy, a common cancer treatment, is affected by patients' cannabis use. Well, there's a few here. Just wanted to highlight this on the screen as you can look in May of last year, while the AMA published research in late 2022. So a few examples of other valid studies that point to what's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a good year. And so with that, we're on to the good stuff. State news. New Mexico sets new monthly cannabis sales records with purchases topping $500 million in first full year of rec market as of January 3rd. And so love to see it. New Mexico is the only state I could find their December 2023 data published already. And obviously Marijuana Moment found it. But good news is we can look at November, which did $34.4 million for adult use and then $12 million for medical. And we can see, like most states, December, people prepare for the holidays, and we see a new record set. $37.4 million, that's up by $3 million, well, up by about $900,000 on the medical side. And so you love to see it. More here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, full link in the comments. Actually, I should bring it up to the top because I went through that pretty quickly. So if you wanted to read the details. Well, happy to share New Jersey dispensary count nearly triples in 2023. It's in their best interest to open way more dispensaries than they currently have, as it's a joke of them to think that when adult use legislation went into effect in April of 2022, only 22 rec dispensaries existed to serve the state's 21 counties and 9.3 million people, much like how Canada screwed it up when they first started. So all that to say, I believe more and more dispensaries are coming. So you can pause to read the rest down here. While happy to report, though, in real time, I think Christopher Norman, shaking my head here, but looks like a big spike in New Jersey cannabis dispensary licenses between December 29th, which was 82 was the number, to January 3rd, now at 90. So it looks like 8 more dispensaries. Q1 looking better. Now 80 adult use versus 10 med only. And so this refers to the government data from New Jersey as well. But Christopher Norman, our favorite source on the ground, thanks for sharing that. Well, this is what I could find out of Missouri from November. So again, we don't have December, but based on looking at New Mexico and over the years, the trend where we see a spike in sales typically in March or April in the spring, then we see it peak summer, July or August, and then we see it December. What do you think is going to happen in Missouri in December? Right? Well, I think they hit a high in September of 98.2 million, and then they've come down a little bit for October and November. Do you think we're going to see a bigger December? I think so. Let me know how much you think they're going to hit in the comments. Well, wanted to share this just because I went to look for the Illinois data, but it has not been updated yet. So it looks like they took an extra week off in Illinois, and I'll try to put that in the comments. Otherwise, just add it to my next week's video. But similar to what we can look at in other states, let's just look at 2022, or I can try and get both in the same frame. Main thing, though, is that similar each year, March, April, we see a big jump, and then the next big spike is usually around July or August, similar to last year too, right? March, July was the big spike, and then December, 130 million from November up to 143 million last year, an increase of about 13 million. Now we know, thankfully, that more and more of those social equity dispensaries are finally opening in Illinois, which is huge. And so from December last year, 3.4 million items sold. Now the average is about 3.5, 3.6, 3.7. So wonder what we're going to get for December. Let me know what you think in the comments is going to be the sales total across the board. Be curious. And if any one of you are actually accurate or close to it, I might consider sending you some money through PayPal. So let me know in the comments. And if a lot of you do pitch in, then hey, yeah, maybe let's make a contest out of it. And so with that, connoisseurs.io, Sharon, what is good in Florida, I believe? Yes, Florida OMMU weekly update, December 29th, 2023 to January 4th, 2024. Flower market share, obviously True Leaves leading the way. THC market share continues to, but we can see all the other competitors from second to fifth behind them. Main thing to highlight, qualified patient count up to 867,072. Main thing is that it's growing, and highlights that Green Dragon opened a dispensary in Daytona Beach. But so main thing to show you the visuals. Of course, you can pause to read to look through them, but total flower sales by ounces by company just this past week alone. Total THC sales in milligrams by company. Total CBD sales in milligrams by company. I think that's it. Usually there's dispensary count. Oh, that might have been the first one. Yes, total dispensing locations by company, and there you go. And so with that, happy to report, though, businessobserverflorida.com, this is as of January 4th, 5 a.m., Florida inches closer to recreational cannabis with 2024 ballot initiative, a proposal that would legalize adult rec cannabis use and bring massive influx of tax revenues, in Florida appears headed to the general election ballot in November. Now, again, I believe I read through it and they spoke to a couple lawyers, and so don't know how true this is, but based on what we've heard in the past and what we're hearing now, it leads us to believe that this will be on the ballot just because the Attorney General's argument is not very strong and because Floridians wanted it and they got the signatures needed, I believe. And so, yeah, more here if you wanted to pause to read the second bit, and then I'll just bring you down to the bottom if you're interested. Otherwise, full link is in the comments. But with that, just out of Florida to share, Verano broadens retail footprint in Northeast Florida with the opening of Move Yulee in company's 74th Florida location. So good for them, continuing to expand early and try to compete in this market that's going to be a behemoth. And so details here if you wanted to pause to read, especially if you're interested in Verano as an opportunity. And with that, got this one out of Ohio, I believe, ABC6 on your side. Cannabis in Ohio, a look inside a growing facility as it prepares to expand production. So this is an older one, but it features Cresco, so I figured I'd share it sort of in the MSO section. Only Verano and Cresco this week. Light news week for the MSOs, but Friday, December 22nd, highlighting that the team at Cresco Labs is planning to increase its reach to meet the demand for cannabis product sales following the state's passage of Issue 2. Now, from what I know as of now, and love to see that they're going to be ramping up, but from what we do know is that I think it was 90 days as of December 8th that the new Ohio law was going to have adult use sales go into effect and allow existing medical providers to sell adult use. Now, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but Ohio GOP governor pushes lawmakers to allow cannabis sales very quickly, which is very promising, especially jumping off of the last story, and ban intoxicating hemp products, which is the THC Delta THC, I don't know. It's just that, just don't put people in jail for it. Take the fake crap and give them the real plant. That's doing God's work. And so, main thing though to highlight is that it seems like this 90-day thing is still in play. It's a strange situation the state has found itself in, he said, with sales currently set to open up in late summer or early fall. I think that was the initial old bill. I think the new one is speeding it up. Devine said he supports a bill the Senate passed last month. Yes, this is it, which would provide for sales through existing medical cannabis dispensaries within 90 days of enactment. So that's what I was going off of. And so it seems like this is still the case, but I'll have to update you when it happens because, of course, as always, however, he acknowledged the House has a differing version and pushed for lawmakers to work together and make sure that we can deal with this problem. Great reporting, Marijuana Moment. And so with that, StockTwits, I wanted to share just some of the buzz to kind of piggyback off of Dan's video earlier on. As StockTwits, an account I don't follow, but let's see how many followers. Almost 1 million. Tweets top trending StockTwits symbols at the close. Behind Apple, what do you know? Number 2. little ETF called MSOs. What a journey it's been on. Is there anything as fun to watch as the state-led growth story? And with that, even Weed Street 420 is getting bullish. As this move is not retail-driven, MSOs had only 4 mentions on Wall Street Bets today. Now, this was early in the week, so January 3rd. Now, obviously, you know that it started to garner more and more attention, and so that's what we love to see. And so Connoisseurs.io, as of Friday, January 5th, Ape started to eyeball MSOs on the Wall Street Bets subreddit. The sector closes significantly higher this week, at least since the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It's been, hey, a great week for cannabis. Let's hope this trend continues because 2024 has been great. Well, Denis Rudev sharing what Viridian has to say once this loads. Again, snippet from investment firm. I don't have access to this, and I imagine he pays to get it. So thank you, Denis, for sharing. Viridian weekly valuation tracker. 100% gains are possible when cannabis is rescheduled. I like this comment. At a zero, man. It's going to be more than double. I would agree. But just to share with you all what it says here, if you wanted to pause to read. A lot of financial lingo there, and you can't even see this really. You might just have to save the image and then zoom in if you're interested. But yes, as always, links will be in the comments. Well, I wanted to share some other state news as here's where Minnesota's legal cannabis journey will go in 2024. This is as of January 3rd. And why this is interesting is because of that Farm Bill loophole, that fake THC derived from hemp is being sold in drinks in Minnesota legally, technically. And it seems like lawmakers might want to use that as an excuse to push laws to create an adult use market, because you might as well. Otherwise, it's just people in Minnesota cashing on the opportunity. Good for them. You got to move when you see it. But good news is that lawmakers might reconvene in February and hopefully start looking at speeding up the legal adult use market in Minnesota from 2025, moving it up to 2024, which would be beneficial. Might as well get that money going into the legal market. And it's technically not illegal what they're doing, obviously, but there's legal cannabis companies operating there doing medicinal, and they're like, well, what the fuck? This isn't real plant. What about us, right? When can we start selling this stuff? So sales are limited for now. There's more here if you wanted to pause to read. But last interesting thing I saw down here was that apparently as of right now, the number of businesses turning over taxes from legal sales of the fake THC products have been climbing by the month. 1,400 last count. So people making money. There's 10% gross receipts tax on cannabis, as well as hemp-derived edibles, creams, and other products. That took effect in July, right? And since the loophole exists, lawmakers are like, well, shit, this is going to be sold. We might as well tax 10%. So lucky them. Pause to read more if you're interested. All the links, as always, in the comments, folks. But with that, from greenmarketreport.com, testing concerns lead to quarantine for 70 of Mississippi MMJ goods, which, again, is just a sign that a legal market is working when regulators can retest something for safety if they get an anonymous tip that deems some of the goods were tainted with pesticides. And so according to the Magnolia Tribune, the State Department of Health put an administrative hold on about 70% of available medical cannabis goods. That's not ideal. And is it all coming from the same source? How can 70% be contaminated? All of the products were tested by the same lab, Rapid Analytics. A representative of the lab told the Tribune that the concerns were baseless, asserting that its methods are sound. And so he says, she says, more here if you wanted to pause to read. While NBCPalmSprings.com, more older Americans are using cannabis, and that is a great thing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I invite you to pause to read if you're interested. And then, hey, might as well scroll down a little bit so you don't have to grab the link and do that yourself. Well, last few stories, Leafly.com, new year, new laws, weed workers' rights kick in, and more. If you're interested, this link will be in the comments. I'll scroll through it quickly, but published on January 1st. So they look at California, Florida, Nevada, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. Things that have already happened this year, and so if you missed them or if you're interested, you can pause to read. I can't for the life of me figure out why they omit the Florida ballot initiative, though. It's great that they're going to be doubling dispensaries or at least licenses, but at the same time, that adult use is a much bigger story. Nevada, New York, can't wait for the day that joke turns around. It's going to take a couple years, but Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And then with that, we've got the Dales report highlighting that Ontario doubles cannabis retail dispensary capability as of January 1, 2024. And so the cannabis retail monopoly now has the green light in Canada as changes took effect that now permit organizations to double the number of stores they operate, of course, if they have the capacity, raising the cap from 75 to 150. And so this is actually great news in a sense for small mom and pop shops that did want to sell for a profit after their hard work. And, that's typically how businesses work. But at the same time, you can see how this is ideal if you wanted to eliminate small businesses and make sure all the businesses around you were just big retail monopolies, as that would be in line with Canada in many other ways. Like our internet providers, we've only got Bell and Rogers, and then all the other small ones are subsidiaries of them. Similar with the banks, we've got 6 big banks, and then I think everything else is mostly subsidiaries. But Again, highlighting that overall, the allowance of larger chains to operate additional storefronts compared to the previous cap marks a shift towards more corporate establishments as opposed to independent stores. Again, who does that help? Not the everyday people on the ground, right? You can just see where this would head. And it's just in line with the government wanting to control more and more. And that's, I think, the best way is over time, play the long game, but eliminate small mom and pop shops and then reach into the pockets of retailers, much like they're doing to cannabis producers in Canada. There's more down here if you wanted to pause to read, but yeah, that'll be very interesting to watch that play out. Well, last bit, Cannabis EU, an update out of Europe, and while we wait for Germany to hopefully line up with something big in the US, around 420, April 20th is the date that's getting talked about, Spain moves closer to medical cannabis approval. And while I believe Spain has legal CBD cannabis with no THC, so they've got a weak medical program, seems the Ministry of Health in Spain has recently finalized a draft for the medical use of cannabis and is set to approve it in the coming months. And so we'll keep you updated, of course, to see if they actually do anything. Government commitment and timeline, I'll just keep you updated. Hopefully sometime in 2024. And so a little bit more down here if you want to pause to read. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.